Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my opinion. And today I'll be reviewing two teams in one video, and those two teams being Kings 11 Punjab and Rajasthan Royals. Now, both these teams failed to qualify for the playoffs this year, and they were kind of both in the race to clinch that fourth spot. And Kings 11's route of qualification was much more in their hands than Rajasthan Royals because Rajasthan Royals had to beat KKR and also hoped that SRH lost to the Mumbai Indians, so that even though SRH's net run rate was way better than Rajasthan's, Rajasthan would have got 14 points, but SRH had only been capped on 12, meaning that Rajasthan would overtake them on points and finish fourth. However, it wasn't meant to be because they lost to KKR by 60 runs and SRH beat Mumbai clinically by 10 wickets. And this means that even if RR had beaten KKR, they wouldn't have got the fourth spot anyway because SRH beat Mumbai. And therefore, net run rates came into play with both teams would have been on the same points. And so with SRH, I think they got plus 0.56 and RR's was, well, way in the negatives. And so, yeah, that was RR's qualification hopes done. And Kings 11 Punjab's, as I said, it was more in their own hands. In fact, if they had beaten CSK, they may not have needed to even rely on what SRH did or think about what SRH did because they had a higher net run rate, Kings 11, than KKR and Rajasthan Royals, meaning that with RCB also losing games, and they lost four in a row, so they was 1-7, lost 3, and at the end of the tournament, or the end of the league phase rather, they were 1-7 and lost 7, meaning that Kings 11 beating CSK could have meant their net run rate could have overtaken RCB's, and so they could have actually qualified in fourth in place of RCB. But they didn't beat CSK, and despite the fact that they went on a very good run where it included wins that you never thought that they would win. You saw against Mumbai Indians and also against the Sunrisers where they bowled them out for 114. You never thought they would win these games, but they did, and they went on a very kind of an emotion-filled run. And even as a person who supported CSK, I enjoyed watching Kings 11 a lot. And I was kind of very sad that they lost to CSK because I really wanted them to qualify because I thought that they had lost a few of their games due to, yes, their death bowling, which was kind of their Achilles heel, but I still thought that they had played good enough cricket to get to the playoffs, especially so their opening batsmen in K. Rahul and Mayank Agarwal easily being the best opening combination of the season. And yeah, I was very sad they didn't get to the playoffs, but what can you do? It's just that if you don't win games that, are there for you to win, even if they're kind of encounters that could go either way, it does hurt in the points table in such a competitive tournament where each team, every single team in the tournament has the best players in the world playing. And yeah, you kind of, if a game's there to win, you have to kind of have that killer instinct to just finish it off. And so, yeah, both of these teams had overall very disappointing seasons with also inconsistencies in the way they played and obviously with where they finished. They finished outside the top four. So Kings 11 had a disastrous start, a disastrous first half of the season where they only won one game out of their first seven. And I don't think they played particularly badly. It's just it was a combination of them, as I said, not being able to finish off games that could have gone either way, and also their death bowling meant that they leaked runs at the end, which I thought, even though in the first game against Delhi, that short run call kind of hurt them because Chris Jordan's run was counted as a short run, meaning that only one run was given when he ran two, and this meant that the game went to a super over, especially thinking that Delhi needed one of three in the end. If that one run was counted from before, the game wouldn't have gone to a super over because Kings 11 would have got one more run than Delhi had. But even in that game, Delhi were 127 for 8, and Chris Jordan comes and gives 30 runs. Yes, I thought some of the field setting was a bit confusing, and so I kind of sympathized with him, but still, I mean, 30 runs even for that, and plus, he's giving sixes, so I mean, yes, he would have been confused about what to bowl, but I still think that he still didn't bowl the greatest of deliveries, and so yeah, it was very disappointing. That was an understatement actually, because in the end it kind of cost him the game. I mean, you're giving a side that bats first something to play with after being 127 for 8, and then in the end letting them finish on 157. It just, they go in with a completely different mindset, and they have a world class bowling attack. And this is Delhi, by the way, and so yeah, I just thought that a death bowling, not only in that game, but it was kind of, you saw that third game where, yes, Rahul Tawatia played, a brilliant innings. And I thought it was just, that innings was kind of an inspiration to kind of just to say to always hang in there, especially the fact that he was 8 off 19 balls and then he scores 45 off the next 12. And I've never seen that in cricket ever, as far as I've been watching cricket. And I've watched cricket since 2011. And yeah, even in that game, despite the fact that Tewatia deserves full credit, the death bowling in that game was quite frankly terrible, with Sheldon Cottrell bowling 5 full tosses and giving 30 runs in his over, and I think there were 5 sixes, and Mohammad Shami just bowling balls in the slot and also getting smashed. And this was a game that they should have won, because they got, a lot more. I think they got 220 odd in that game. And in the end, they still managed to lose a very good game for the viewers and Rajasthan Royals fans and players, but not a great game if you're a Kings 11 fan or player, because really, at that point, you're kind of thinking, after a great win against RCB in their second game, you're kind of thinking, right, they should really be, despite their death bowling woes, they should really be 1-3 and lost 0, but they weren't. They were 1-1 and lost 2, and this kind of fed into a very bad loss against the Mumbai Indians, where the Mumbai Indians were 124 for 4 and 16.1 overs, and in the end they finished on 191 because of, once again, the death bowling. And especially Mohammad Shami, yes, I thought the turning point was when he bowled that brilliant over defending 5 in the game where there were 2 super overs, but until then, he hadn't really found his best form bowling at the death, and he bowled 3 very good overs before then. And that we in the last over of the innings, which he usually bowled, he kind of gave at least 20 runs and completely gave the total a new look. And Kings 11 were in the end kind of going in more often than not, thinking that kind of let the opposition get much more than they were originally slated to get. And yeah, that was their death bowling. Chris Jordan's form didn't really help either, because he's, as I even said in my previous video, the lack of a refined attack really hurt them. And, yes, there was a lack of a refined attack, and also the lower order of batting. You saw Glenn Maxwell, his best performance in this tournament really has been bowling none for 24 in his 4 overs against the Mumbai Indians. And notice how I said a bowling performance, because his highest score in batting has been 32, and he's really done, I think his strike rate isn't even 120, and it may even be lower than that. So it's he's done nothing this season. And Harsha Bhogle said something, that was kind of very true, is that, are we looking, obviously, look, like, and even in my, from my perspective, I think that Glenn Maxwell will always kind of attract reasonable bids in the auction, because everyone knows that when he gets going, he can change a game. But the fact is that it's kind of nowadays being based on hope rather than, what he does in reality, because I don't think he scored a 50 since 2016. And really, he's only had one good IPL season where, even then, his best form was in the UAE, and when he came to India, he kind of didn't really do that much. And so, yeah, I still think that he's a brilliant player, and I still think that, he will. I wouldn't be surprised if he still attracts reasonable bids at auctions, because everyone knows about his ability. But I think that for players like him, Rishabh Pant, Kuldeep Yadav, I think that they need to have this kind of mental standpoint where they're just free to express themselves. Yes, Glenn Maxwell probably hasn't done himself that great this year, because in the end, I thought there wasn't actually that much pressure put on him to perform. Whereas you saw Rishabh Pant was kind of constantly being trolled, and Kuldeep Yadav, well, for a while now, people have kind of questioned his wicket-taking form, and is that he's not really looked himself. He's looked low on confidence, and therefore he's actually hardly featured in this tournament. But Glenn Maxwell played in every game bar one. He played in every game apart from the game against against Chennai Super Kings, and yeah, he just basically did nothing in this tournament. And I still feel that a truly kind of a mentally, if they the kind of phrase I use, the mental standpoint, I just think that players like him, Rishabh Pant and Kuldeep Yadav, having a mental standpoint where they're free enough to go and express themselves, I think that they can change games, as they've shown that they can do. And but I still think that I'm not sure where Glenn Maxwell will be able to find his best form in the IPL, because especially uh, in the series before this, so when Australia went to England, he had a disappointing series even then, apart from that last innings in the final one day international, where I think Australia was 72 for 5. And in the end, him and Alex Carey both scored hundreds and won Australia the game and the series. And so from that, you thought he would kind of take a bit of confidence from that into the IPL, but it wasn't to be. And so, yeah, that was Kings 11. The fact that KL Rahul and Mayank Agarwal played absolutely brilliantly, and KL Rahul scored 670 runs. Yes, he was criticized, because of his strike rate, but in the end, I think he still struck at 129, which for an opener isn't bad at all. And I'm yes, I still think that unfortunately in T20 cricket, strike rate is a great leveler. We've seen Shubman Gill, despite the fact that he scored above 400 runs this tournament, the fact that a lot of the times his strike rate hasn't actually been up to par. But then again, I just like watching both those players bat. So despite the fact that I unfortunately think strike rate is a huge leveler in T20 cricket, I just thought, with the way that when they both played well, the shots that they were playing, the kind of the ease that they looked when they were batting, I just thought that it was really enjoyable to watch. And Mayank Agarwal, despite the fact that he's had a good season, but I don't think he's made the most of his form. And then he only averages 38 point something, I think 38.54, and he scored about 400 runs this season. And all right, they're great numbers, but I just feel that he's only got two 50s and 100. And so even when he scored 20s, you saw how well he was hitting the ball. I think he would have really wanted to get at least a few more 50s and really make the most of his form. And I was sad every single time he got out, because it was so enjoyable to watch him bat, the confidence that he was carrying. But yeah, I just feel that it's good that I mean, he's a brilliant player. He's in such brilliant form, and I hope that he can take this confidence to Australia. He's actually been included in the T20 squad also for Australia, as because he was already in the Test squad, but now because of his IPL performances, they've put him in the T20 squad, and I'm very happy for him, and I hope he can succeed. And I wouldn't be surprised if he does, because he's a quality player. He may not get a game, but still, he's just shown that he's such a class player, and he's been one of my favorite players to watch this season. And so, yeah, another player who's kind of, for their big turnaround, even though the thing is that ever since he came in, I just think it's the mood in the side when Chris Gale walks in, and it's just the way he got to 1,000 sixes, and when he against Rajasthan Royals, and I think he scored 13,000 odd runs in T20 cricket, and 6,000 of them have been in sixes, and he's quite easily the best T20 batsman ever, and probably the best there will ever be in a long time. But yeah, I really, I'm a huge Chris Gale fan, and the fact that his inclusion in the side, it just kind of changed the whole mood in the team, and you saw these really good performances coming in, and he was also brilliant with the bat. I think he averaged his 41 this season, and he got another 99, which we all wanted to see him get another 100, especially because he got 99 not out in the previous season against RCB. And Chris Gale was visibly upset about one not getting, not helping, being able to get extra runs for his team, and also not getting to 100, which he has so many of. So yeah, that was Chris Gale. Again, a brilliant ambassador for T20 cricket, and honestly, I think that, like Mandeep Singh said, he should never retire, because you can watch him just hit sixes for ages, and even just the aura he provides in the team, and he just lights up every tournament he goes. I know he's not picked in the PSL, but he does so much in the IPL that, yeah, it was kind of irrelevant for me to say that, but I'm just a huge Chris Gill fan. I just think that these West Indian stars kind of, they give life to every T20 tournament and just the T20 game in general. So that was the Kings 11. I just felt that despite the fact that, it was, they were very exciting side to watch, but I just feel like this I didn't go on about it too much in this video because I have gone on about it in previous videos. This kind of this the bowling that the bowling group that they have, apart from Mohammad Shami, it's a very blunt attack, and I just feel that they should move on from these other players such as Chris Jordan, who, as I said, better athlete than he is a bowler for a long while now. In fact, and every for all the years I've seen him. But it's just the fact that, yeah, I think they have to kind of get names with more pedigree and maybe look away from these death bowling specialists and kind of just think, look, we have to just get really good bowlers who can bowl at any phase of the innings, and also with good leg spinners and Murugan Ashwin and Ravi Bishnoi supplementing that. I feel that they would, it will be a solid bowling attack, and I really hope that the next year, if there is an auction, Kings 11 can kind of try to address these problems and really come back a better team, and also get a few more lower order bats. And you saw the example of Abdul Samad. You've seen how good he's come. I just think that, even if it is kind of domestic talent, a refined death over hitting. You saw how Deepak Huda played against CSK, getting Kings 11 to a respectable total. I think something like that. Just getting kind of the bowling and the lower order batting, getting some more refinement in those areas can really change the look of this team. So that was the Kings 11 Punjab. And yeah, I hope that they can do better next season because they're a very enjoyable team to watch. So the Rajasthan Royals, a team that unfortunately finished last, and it's just that throughout the tournament, I really think that they didn't exactly get this refined performance in. And what I mean is that there's one glaring weakness that they would have to address, and that's their bowling apart from Jofra Archer and also Shreyas Gopal. Because you take those 8 overs off, the rest really just give runs. And I mean, is that you look at Jofra Archer, I mentioned this stat in a previous video. He's taken 10 wickets in the power play at an economy rate of 4.34. And the other seamers have taken 5 at an economy rate of over 10. And it's just, after Jofra Archer's 2 overs, the teams have a kind of phase where, yes, Shreyas Gopal bowls well, but apart from those two, the teams have a phase where they use this word in the Sky Sports cricket podcast, and Nasser Hussain was talking about this drop off the after Archer. And I mean that it's just a run fest really throughout the middle. And yes, Tewatia bowls well sometimes, but what I'm trying to say is there isn't a threat. And that's why especially the seamers just get whacked around the place. I mean, you saw against Delhi Capitals, Jofra Archer bowled some delivery to Prithvi Shaw to get a wicket in the first ball of the game. And after that, I mean, the game was very fast paced, but I'm saying it was fast paced because the other seamers were getting whacked around by Shikhar Dhawan. And in the end, despite the fact that, this was a kind of a transition period where they got 184 for 8, and we thought, will this be enough? But it proved to be enough. I mean, then maybe the surface was slowing up, and that was kind of one of the first indications that maybe the Sharjah surface that was there in the tournament at the start of the tournament, where teams were scoring 200 plus for fun, it was kind of changing from that. But also Rajasthan Royals did not play it well at all. And I'm going to talk about the batting here as well. You saw poor Yashasvi Jaiswal. I mean, I felt for him because especially after all he's been through to get to this position, he's someone who you'd want to succeed, but he just scored a runner ball 30 odd and he got out, and in the end he just put pressure on his team. And also it's just that the batting also hasn't fired consistently enough. You look at the 4 overseas players that the Rajasthan Royals have, and the 3 batsmen that they have in Ben Stokes, Stephen Smith and Josh Butler. And they haven't really fired consistently enough. Ben Stokes' stats are skewed because of two innings, the 100 and the 50 against Kings 11. And that's why it says he averages 40 when it was a kind of, it was, despite all he was going through, I'm saying that, especially you look at 2018, 2019, and then now 2020 until those two games, it was kind of a struggle for him in the IPL. His fielding is still, he always fields well, but saying as far as bowling and batting, it was kind of a struggle for him in the IPL. And ever since that 2017 season, and also you look at Josh Buttler, he's whenever he came out to bat, he showed how good he was. But I'm saying he would have probably wanted to get a few more big scores. I mean, you've seen how. Alright, this example may be a bit of a harsh example, but you look at the game against CSK. Now, CSK scored 120 odd. It was a very, very, as a CSK supporter especially, it was a very bad innings to watch. But because of Rajasthan Royals' frailties, I kind of thought the early wickets would give CSK hope. And the thing is that despite the fact that Rajasthan Royals started well, I think they got 20 runs in the first 2 overs, they very quickly found themselves 28 for 3. And the Chennai bowlers bowled very well to Steven Smith, and so he was kind of playing second fiddle and not going at a very great strike rate. Again, I'm not going to really criticize him because they were bowling very well to him. But you kind of felt that if they had got Josh Buttler's wicket, especially, in that consolidation phase, where if they had just got his wicket, it could have just exposed the other batsmen. And yes, Tewatia has been brilliant this tournament, but in that situation, I mean, you never know, he may have done it because also him and Riyan Parag won them the game against Sunrisers when they were 26 for 3 within the power play. But it's just that could have kind of triggered more wickets to fall. And because Josh Buttler didn't get out, he scored 17 out of 48 balls with Steven Smith also unbeaten, and Rajasthan Royals managed to win easily. And the thing is that we see there that the team was, with that 70, the team was just so reliant on Josh Buttler to not get out and bat through, and also Steven Smith, is because with Rajasthan Royals, you never quite knew what was going to happen. And I mean, especially 20 without loss in 2 overs and 28 for 3. And the thing is that we all weren't even surprised. I mean, we were surprised that it happened, but we weren't surprised thinking that with what Rajasthan Royals had done, we weren't surprised that this was the situation that they got themselves into. But they won that game, and, they deserved to win that game in the end. They bowled very well. And, yeah, I mean, I brought that game up because it kind of showed that this team requires its big players to fire. You look at, the 4 overseas players that they have. You look at the drop-off after Jofra Archer bowls. Yes, Shreyas Gopal does do well, but I'm saying that as far as the pace bowling is concerned, there's no real threat in the attack. And without the batsmen, I think that, they did score 50s, but they didn't actually score 50s, especially after the first 2 games at the same times. And so you look at, you look at Steven Smith, you look at Josh Buttler, you look at Sanju Samson, and you're thinking, well, they've had half decent tournaments if you look at the stats. But if you actually look, the times that they fired, the fact that they actually rarely fired at the same time hurt Rajasthan Royals. But then again, I think that with this team, it's kind of something where, they had the 4 overseas players. They had Rahul Tewatia, they had Shreyas Gopal, and they had Sanju Samson. And that's, 7 players, playing well, especially on their day. I mean, you wouldn't think a team like that would kind of languish at the bottom of the table. But, they are. And it's to say, this is kind of the same example with the Kings 11. It's the fact is that they need this refined bowling attack, and I know Indian talent is very important, but again, this is a kind of a bit of a problem here because they can't include overseas players because they have that overseas combination that I think they shouldn't change. But the thing is, they have to find some refined bowlers from somewhere. All right, Tyagi, look, he's inexperienced, and Varun Aaron hasn't really, before you saw he could really get it up to that 150 mark. I mean, it's a bit harsh if I say that he can't go there now. But he can't go there now. And yes, he gets to like 143. But the reason why I'm saying the actual pace that he bowls is irrelevant. The fact is that he's completely kind of lost that extra edge that he has. It's really sad for me to see, because when he was bowling fast, especially when he went to England in 2014, I think he was the only bowler that actually really managed to do anything. And also when the India went to Australia, when all right, David Warner's wicket fell on the no ball, but we saw how fast Vernon was bowling, exceeding 150. And a bowler, seeing him bowl like that, he's not even that old, and I just think that he seems a bit. Yes, he didn't really feature much in this tournament, but I'm saying that that kind of option to rely on, looking through your Indian talent, Rajasthan Royals aren't actually in that great of a situation with their pace bowling, because you look at Jaydev Unadkat. Now, he's had good first class seasons coming into IPLs, but the problem is that this is what I think. In the first class season, he just gets the ball, tries to swing the ball around. Yes, it is with a red ball, but he bowls in a different way. And you still may think, well, you kind of have to bowl in a different way. But what I'm saying is, now he's just bowling way too many slower balls, and it clearly hasn't worked. I mean, 2018, 2019, and now 2020. I just feel like for a tall, fast bowler like him, why can't he just... You saw in 2017 when he was bowling much faster how good of a season he had. And I just think that if he could just bowl faster, just get back to bowling how he used to. I know it's easier said than... I mean, I don't understand this mentality. I understand that with T20 cricket, sometimes it's kind of the need to adapt to situations, and maybe you'd feel that you need to have these kind of change ups in your armory, which is true. But he hardly bowls a quicker delivery, and the batsmen just set up for it and wait on it and just smash it. And I mean, it's very, especially seeing the season that he had in 2017 that almost, got RPS to win the title that year. But again, yeah, especially, and also seeing how good first class seasons he has, he just, when he's, bowling much faster, getting the ball to move around, he just seems like a completely different bowler than just someone who bowls change ups in the IPL. And yeah, I think that if he could just kind of do that a lot more, I'm not saying that it will completely work, but he would get much better results, and results that we've all seen that he's been good when he has bowled in a way where he's bowled much faster. So, I mean, yeah, that's on Jaydev Unadkat, and I hope that he can, find his, rhythm back, because for a while now, he's been really low in confidence. So yeah, that's the fast bowling. It hasn't exactly been great. I'm trying to think who else there is, but really the main, there's Ankit Rajput. Look, I know he gave 60 runs in that Mumbai Indians game, and it completely, yes, Rajasthan won that game, but the fact is that with the amount of full tosses he bowled, and especially the fact that Shreyas Gopal had got Karan Pollard out, and you kind of thought that Rajasthan Royals were almost fully in control of that game, and was certainly dictating the game at that point. But Hardik Pandya came in, and the death bowling once again wasn't the greatest, especially from Ankit Rajput, and he gave out 60 runs in his 4 overs and got Mumbai Indians to 195. I'm not going to blame him, because I've seen him bowl well. Look, he bowls at 140 and swings the ball. I just feel that with these teams, Kings 11 and who is it, Rajasthan Royals, I think that there's one problem for Rajasthan Royals the Kings 11 don't have, and that's that for Kings 11, their whole overseas combination. What you look at, Chris Gale, Glenn Maxwell, and I'm trying to think who, Nicholas Puran. But the thing is that the others aren't exactly. You look at Jimmy Neesham and Chris Jordan. Would you really put them in the team if you had other options? No, you wouldn't. So that means you can kind of have flexibility with your overseas combination. But for Rajasthan Royals, they have Ben Stokes, Steve Smith, Josh Butler, and Jofra Archer. And that's probably the best overseas combination you can get in the world right now. And with this, you wouldn't want to change it. You shouldn't change it. And so therefore, you kind of have to bank on other players to supplement that. And this is why I'm saying, when you look at all the bright spots that Rajasthan Royals have had this season, I mean, you look at Jofra Archer, Sanju Samson, Rahul Tewatia, you look at the 100 that Ben Stokes scored, you look at every time Josh Butler's come in, he's made batting look easy, Stephen Smith has... I feel like he kind of unfairly gets kind of stigmatized with this whole people kind of really look to see whether he can adapt to the T20 game, and I don't see why that is, considering that he scored above 500 runs, leading the rising Pune Super Giants to almost a title in 2017. I mean, seeing how well he has played in T20s, I feel that it's very unfair that he should be stigmatized with this kind of, really considering what he does in the side and kind of saying, kind of really thinking about whether he will adapt to the T20 game, because he's shown time and time and again that he just finds a way to adapt to any situation. And yes, that's on them. I just feel that, notice how, with Kings 11 I kind of went into quite a few examples, and for Rajasthan Royals it's just that it's just not been great in general. You look at especially, I thought, from the very first game against the Chennai Super Kings. And the thing is that, yes, they scored 216, a very good batting effort, a brilliant batting effort. But the thing is, CSK were 90 for 4 in 11 overs. And that scorecard was, to hear it was, and if you just see it, it was kind of flattering as to the game situation, because CSK fans who were watching that game felt a lot worse than 90 for 4 in 11 overs. And it was a lot worse than 90 for 4 in 11 overs, simply because of the lack of intent. And from that point, you kind of thought, well, all right, they didn't try, and that was what we first thought. And then afterwards, it was kind of this whole having to change the team philosophy, that going deep wasn't exactly working anymore. A very hard realization, but that's what this season has kind of been for CSK. And so, coming back to Rajasthan Royals, you thought this is going to be a good win for Rajasthan Royals if they can just keep this up. And this is what happened. From that point, CSK started hitting way too late, and Faf du Plessis was absolutely hammering the Rajasthan Royals bowlers, and even Archer, because for some reason Archer was just bowling slower balls. And even Kevin Peterson said on commentary, if you have someone like Jofra Archer bowling, 150, you're happy if he bowls a slow ball. You're not thinking, oh, will he bowl a slow ball? You're kind of like, the fact is that people think that they'll be bamboozled by the slow ball. But the fact is, no one likes real express pace. And in that situation, like AB de Villiers did against KKR, waiting on those slow balls and smashing them, Faf du Plessis did just that. And it was just how easy it was to toy with the Rajasthan Royals bowlers towards the end. I mean, that's the thing, that despite the fact that they won, and also in the next game, well, look, they've conceded 220 something. So clearly it's the fact that despite the fact that they won those first two games, you looked at that bowling attack, and even Mark Nicholas said after the first game, he said it in, can that attack get Rajasthan Royals all the way? I don't know, maybe it can. And I understand he was kind of being diplomatic about it, but what everyone would have thought, they would have read between the lines, and certainly I did, is that will it really? And it's because I just felt that it's so thin compared to the other attacks, even RCB. I mean, in RCB, they found this new formula where they can play two wrist spinners in Yuzvendra Chahal and Adam Zampa, and I think they should do that. They should play their best bowlers rather than looking at anything else. I think for them, playing their best bowlers, which I thought they kind of did again in that game against SRH, I think that is their best attack that they have right now. And the thing is with Rajasthan Royals, that they can't do that, because you look through that team and think, I don't want to take out any overseas players. And the Indian players aren't exactly, really showing despite the fact that they're not bad players, they are very good players, but they don't really have that kind of standout kind of tag yet. They are good players, and I'm sure that they will, after a while they will start to shine, but they are relatively, especially Tyagi is relatively inexperienced. And so I think that this attack, it was kind of looking to see how Archer and Gopal kind of regulating things, but Archer to really get the breakthroughs. And Archer did get the breakthroughs, and Gopal did kind of regulate things well. But without a refined bowling attack, they got hit around. And in the end, it was a very frustrating thing pretty much every single game. And even for a person who doesn't support them, as a neutral, I was very kind of, despite the fact that I support CSK, I kind of want the game to go well, just as respective to, for example, let's say if a bowling side bowls well, right? I don't want them to kind of lose it in the end and the batting side just smash them around, like what happened for Mumbai Indians against Rajasthan Royals. And because I feel like when you've bowled well for so long, you kind of deserve to close the game out and go in a very happy side at the halfway stage. But this was a constant kind of thing that happened. And you may be thinking, why does he keep on? For the other one, it was kind of a more articulate review where he was just going into some players and saying they should move on. Because I don't think anyone in this team is really that kind of bad. Maybe Varun Arande, if he doesn't really get back to bowling decently, he really seems to be out of sorts. They may have to move on from him. But apart from that, I think that this team, the thing about this here is that this team actually had a lot of good qualities in it. And it's just that, just one thing, especially even towards the end, all right, the KKR game was a bit of a nightmare, but you saw against Mumbai Indians and KXIP and Punjab that the batting just came together. And when those batsmen fire, they are a joy to watch, even if they're playing against CSK, if it was a high scoring game. Sanju Samson, when he scored that 74, I mean, I was happy watching that, but it's just the fact that one thing, the lack of bowling, is just been the difference between them kind of really challenging for that top four, and them kind of having to getting close but still having to in the end rely on other results. And the fact is that even if they had beaten KKR, they wouldn't have won the game. And so they just kind of found ways to lose games where you really didn't expect them to lose. You saw they could have beaten Delhi, and instead, yes, Delhi bowled well, but Rajasthan Royals did 81 of 66, and in the end they lost by 13 runs. And the thing is, when they needed 81 of 66, Ben Stokes and Sanju Samson were batting, and you kind of thought, surely this is a win. This will be a win that boosts their confidence, being the second place side in the tournament. I think at that point they were maybe even first, but on the second best team in the tournament. But they lost that game, and yeah, in the end, but by the way they lost it, you kind of thought this team just doesn't have that real finishing touch that would take them places, despite the fact that they have good players. And I hope that they can amend that. I feel that there are players in all teams that would be wanting to get games. That's the one thing good about this tournament, is that I just feel if all the players who don't get games go to these other franchises and just, they can get playing time, meaning that every team can play to the best of their ability and have their favorite combinations. I feel like with no team having a disadvantage, then obviously, of course, there's a pedigree of, Mumbai Indians will obviously have the best players, but especially also as a team, and even their Indian players stand up. But it's the fact that it will be a much more even playing field in the IPL, because you look this year, how thrilling it's been, the IPL. Rajasthan Royals themselves has provided us with such thrilling moments, Tewatia, Archer, Ben Stokes, and so on. But in the end, you look at this and thought there was one team that was above everyone else. And even though they lost, they were 1-1, lost 2 in their first 3 games. And did you think that they weren't going to win? No, because you thought they would win easily, and they have won easily. I mean, the first Delhi-Mumbai game that there was in this tournament, you kind of thought, right, this is a chance for a statement. You look at a Delhi team that's been getting momentum. This is a chance for Delhi to throw Mumbai off, their guard a little bit, make them kind of some insecurities kind of creep in that, we lost to the second best side in the tournament, and this is the challenge for us because we basically destroy everyone else. And Delhi would have been thinking we have to beat Mumbai because we also destroy everyone else, apart from Sunrisers. But I'm saying that, yeah, that Delhi lost, and that's because Mumbai I think that you look at these other, I know I'm kind of going into Mumbai a little bit, but I'm very unfairly comparing, Rajasthan Royals and Mumbai Indians. And it's the fact that there's such a gulf between the first and the 8th place. And I really don't want there to be such a gulf, because you look at Rajasthan Royals, especially as you saw in 2019, they kind of went out of the tournament in a very unceremonious way by getting absolutely thrashed by the Delhi Capitals. And in 2018, they qualified, well, yes, in probably the win of the tournament in I understand there were more thrilling games, but especially in the fact that the overseas players had gone, and the other players, Klaassen kind of came into the side and they beat an RCB side, knocking RCB out, and Kings 11 had to defend. I think they scored 153 and they had to defend 98 because of net run rate, and CSK won that game in the end, chased down the score, and RR qualified. But the fact is that this team over the last 3 seasons hasn't exactly been assured, and they've really not, it's very frustrating to see. Like I said, there's kind of been this depressing aura around Rajasthan Royals because everything seems to go wrong despite there being some good moments along the way. So that was Rajasthan Royals. Two very contrasting analysis. You look at Kings 11 going more into what happened, but in Rajasthan Royals, it was just a constant depressing aura about the team. I still think they were much better to watch than KKR. KKR was something else kind of bad this year. But yeah, I just feel that with just a refined bowling attack, just looking for this Indian talent in the auction that they can just throw in, I think that would really boost this team a lot because they have the players to really go far in this tournament, and in future tournaments rather. On another note, I think there are rumors that I first thought that the mega auction would be for IPL 2022, but actually there's a rumor that it may be for 2021, and they've said that they will notify the franchises by December on whether that decision will be there. One, it will be a bit sad for me being a CSK fan with all these, older players being there. Would kind of want to see them for one last time before they sadly get moved on from. But another thing is that I feel that some teams would, yes, they may not be mentally prepared to kind of get into that mode of rejigging, kind of keeping a good core preferably, but kind of rejigging everything around it. They may not actually be in that frame of mind, especially the fact that it's been an IPL behind closed doors, and people were kind of expecting maybe if it's another IPL behind closed doors, we get that done, and then after that it's going to be IPL in India where all the fans will be there, it'll be back to usual again, and you can really kind of get back to getting your best team out, get into that mindset because you're playing for the fans that turn up at the ground. And I feel that it would have been a much more happier situation. I mean, I still wish that crowds could come in IPL 2021, but it probably won't happen. And yeah, I'm sure it won't happen. But one thing I'd also like to see is that the IPL happening in India, again, it may happen in the UAE, but as we've seen, I mean, we've kind of seen the PSL, for example, happening in Pakistan, and it's going to happen behind closed doors. But it would just feel so much better happening, in Pakistan rather than in the UAE. It just seems really just away from everything, and I just feel that I know I'm going on a bit of a tangent a little bit here, but that's the kind of thing where I wouldn't really. Again, it would kind of the adrenaline of kind of saying who are we gonna get would kind of kick in if they do have the mega auction this time around. But also it would be for a team that has many heritage names in cricket. It would be very sad to see them not get another chance to play a final season and get a very good farewell. Despite the fact that there'll be no fans in the stadiums, we as fans will be able to get to see them in action one last time. So that's Kings 11 Punjab and Rajasthan Royals. And yeah, if you like this video, if you enjoy this video, please like and subscribe, and please share this video with your friends. And remember, this is my opinion. What's yours?